Hey,
Samir. Hi, welcome here.
hey,
Do
thank
you
you. Thank you guys.
do you want to just you know give a very short introduction on what do you do and what do you want to hear from this meetup
Yeah,
experience?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I've been in Bitcoin space for I think over 6 years, or maybe seven.
Wow.
But into BSV since the fork. So,
Oh.
but at first I was hesitant about
Mm-hmm.
what it was, but then as like most of us, as I studied more and as I discovered more, I'm starting to like, and I call it's gonna be the longest chain.
Okay.
But you guys might not be familiar with me, but I'm definitely familiar with you guys because I've watched your videos. It's
Nice.
Xiao. I always forget to pronounce your name correctly.
Xiaohui.
Xiaohui.
It's
Yeah,
Xiaohui. Yeah,
Xiaohui.
thank you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
your videos with Craig Wright.
Mm-hmm.
It was they have been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
and Kevin and you guys, since this podcast or since this meetup, yeah, I know you guys
Mm-hmm.
as well. And Tyler, I met you in the conference. I don't know if you
Yes, I think
recall
I
me.
recall. You were
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
So
about stable coins and things, weren't you?
yes, I was
wow,
talking about
Okay,
nice.
I remember.
stablecoin. Yeah.
Yes, and also the meaning of life and some other interesting conversations
Yes. Yes.
and some
And
things. Yeah,
yeah,
good conference for sure.
definitely. Yeah, it was
Mm.
a great conference. I'm a very philosophical guy, and I have my company called and I find that very common with the BSV folks.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can get my video up here. But yeah,
Okay,
I don't have
that'd be great.
I don't have a yeah, but you give me a while. But yeah, but basically, yeah, that's and I have my company called Zamir, which is basically a Bitcoin branding company because
Mm-hmm.
so what I do is I invest in small companies and small upcoming startups and try to bring them into the Bitcoin philosophy, like how Bitcoin works. And because I believe it's a future, and I think the working philosophy between the traditional business versus Bitcoin business is going to be a little bit different. So I basically, it's a branding company. We brand new startups into Bitcoin. So that's what we do. So yeah, that's
Cool.
basically my short summary, and I'll figure out my camera here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Well,
Okay,
welcome.
cool.
Your
Welcome.
name
Thank
is
you.
fixed now. It says Samir.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did
definitely.
update.
Where are you based?
I'm based in the
Nice.
US in Boston.
Okay,
Yeah.
Boston. Cool, cool.
Yeah, Boston. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm getting my new camera, so this is gonna be temporary.
That's fine. I think we don't care about much about the video quality, but here, so we care about the the content. All right,
Definitely,
cool,
definitely.
cool, guys. Yeah, you guys have been on the ground. I think last week we recap a little bit of CoinGeek. I mean, you guys have been on the ground. Ty, very great talk. I mean, we are all inspired. Like you are like I think probably the most passionate about the speech given there. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't be able to make the last meetup. I was actually on a plane during that time,
Mhm.
and I don't know if the people
Are you
next to me
wearing the
would have
t-shirt?
appreciated.
Are you
Yes, I am wearing
that
a Mad
t-shirt?
Metallic.
Can you show that? Okay.
There. Um,
That's
I,
too funny.
I by chance
Okay.
did wear it again today.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm happy to have presented my project, and it's really basically the same thing I've been saying this entire time. Ever since I randomly dropped in the middle of one of these meetups, I was like, oh well, I guess I'll join and see what these people are talking about. And yeah, basically what I said during my presentation is that we need to make an ecosystem around the idea that everybody has the ability to roam, as Kevin has said, freely between the feudal castles instead of having them locked inside each one. So that's the main idea, and I think going from there, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we need to do in order to get there. We need to build identity systems on chain. It could be an interesting topic, like how do we identify people, and then how do we allow them to preserve their identities on an individual basis through using the blockchain. I think BAP is an interesting approach that I just learned about this week, protocol for doing those sorts of things.
What's it called?
What's the BAP?
BAP, somebody sent it to me, and I did a call with him, and it was a really good discussion. But let me try to pull it up here and see if I can.
It might be Bitcoin attestation protocol.
Something to that, something like that. I'm looking to see if I can identify the person that I was talking with, but
It's
it was a
interesting.
protocol around identity. What were you saying?
Got it. It's interesting. I think it was Ian Grigg was talking about identity, and
yes,
he said something about how, I don't know if it's from him, but when I was on this subject, somebody was saying something about how our driver's license were never meant to actually be our identifiers, but they just it became a thing where we used our driver's license as our identity. It was never meant to be that way. It's just supposed to be for the license for a car. But yeah, I think identity, if we're talking philosophically, it's like, it's not something that you can really define yourself. It's something that's defined by the people around you, which is sort of an interesting concept. So if you need a lot of different touch points from various things. Driver's license is one of those things, apparently, and it just worked well. But I
mean, it's interesting. Like for me, I don't even obviously drive, and so because of my vision, I don't see well enough to drive. But they give a state ID card, which they now have actually started to do if you don't have a driver's license, which is basically the ID card that you have, if you don't have a driver's license. So they've had to fill in the gaps a little bit, but it's this very, federated, if you will, system where they sort of have to fill in all these little gaps, and there's different ways of having identity. I mean, you have the passports, of course, which are a very strong form of identity. But then again, they're not very, you don't go carrying your passport around. Like if I'm going to a bar and I want to drink and they say, can I have your ID? Because I don't know if you're 21. I don't give them my passport because, that would just be, I'm sure it would work, but that's just not something that people do. Right. And so there's different standards in different places around the world. And then there's also different sort of levels of confidence that we can ascribe to things. Like sometimes you'll just need to have a library card and a student ID card or something like that. And that's not a very high, it would be pretty easy, I would think, to obtain one of those things. If you wanted to get one without having a high degree of, security involved. So if we're going to build these things on the blockchain, I think all those things should actually be, I don't want to say that we should solve them, actually. I don't want to say that we should have a single protocol that gets rid of all of these problems, because identity should be sort of nuanced and also, what's the word? It should be on a sort of spectrum in which there should be weak forms of identification for certain things and stronger forms for more serious endeavors and serious interactions that are being made. And if I sign a loan document and whatever, I probably should have a very strong form of government ID. But if I just want to get into a social network that's for people who have read a certain book or something, then I, might only need to have a library card as well as a proof that, maybe I read and understood whatever, that particular book was. So getting all of those nuances in place and getting people to accept them is going to be interesting, and creating, maybe not even just one on-chain protocol for that, but a collection of different protocols that enable various aspects of this is going to be interesting and difficult, I would say.
Yeah, I concur some of this idea here. It kind of reminds me of when Craig's talking about the so-called how do you quantify the degree of decentralization in a network. It's not about the nodes, how many nodes you have, it's about the connections, right? I think identity, I think interesting, 2 days ago, we have a small offline, like a meetup for local BSV people. And we are talking about Ian Craig and identity. I think one of the points I think is which you guys also mentioned here, is not about the node. It's not never like some individual saying who he is. It's always a different connection points, right? Let's say I say, oh, I know Kevin, or that's one degree of connection, right? And then I have another government issued ID, or say this is Xiaohui, or I have when I bought the Bitcoin.org domain, right? I use my credit card, right? That's another. It's never like isolated. Yeah, I don't know how this is going to evolve, but yeah, it seems that's a good good way to how to prove your identity, right? Or you can hold private keys. That's another edge also, but that's not like the ultimate proof. Yeah, as versus a lot
of it's a form of evidence, but it's not really proof. I wouldn't say. I found the document I was referring to. It was a Siggy that created this, and I'm going to post it in the thread for this.
Thread on Slack. Yeah, it's great.
Let's see. Yeah, here we are. I'll post a link.
Well, let's like pretend like we all know that our social security number isn't us. You know what I mean? That's like an existing thing. It's not. It's like there's the physical Kevin, and then there's my number. But knock on wood, like I've never had to replace that. But there is a process for replacing that, and so it'd be interesting to see what that process is.
That's a really big pain. Believe me.
Yeah, you probably need some kind of like a proof of address, and then like a government ID, a utility bill, or bank statement.
There's a form. There's a form called Form SS5, and you have to fill it out, and it's application for a social security card. And on that form, you have to provide. I think you have to send them various. You have to send them a birth certificate, which you can request from going on websites. And you have to literally send all of this stuff through the mail to their thing, because of course they're closed right now, or they were at the time when I had to go through all this nonsense. And I think also like a passport and some other things, and then they'll give you a new social security card.
But so if you could think about this, what Chao Wei was saying, where these are like different connection points. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's the ratio of nodes on the network to connections between them. So take the number of take the number of nodes and then divide that by connections divided by nodes would give you like the what did Craig say, the level of connectivity in Bitcoin was 1.32.
Number of hops.
Number of hops on average between nodes. And I wonder if that's actually the same ratio that defines the amount of decentralization that exists.
I just want to add, like, when it comes to identity, it is like you guys are saying, it's my identity is me, me at this point in all the transactions that I've had from the beginning of my life to now is my identity. It cannot be just a social security number, or these are parts of the identity, but it doesn't define my identity. It's the whole of me that makes up an identity. Yeah, everything that I've done. And I think it relates to Bitcoins really well, especially with the SPV, where where you have a peer-to-peer transaction. So if I'm having a transaction with Kevin, and that becomes a part of my identity, but at the same time I store that transaction, which is me. At the same time, Kevin stores his transaction at the same, and also that's part of the peer-to-peer SPV, and we register that to the Bitcoin network, and that becomes a global identity. So nobody's gonna, and we can still have privacy because nobody can figure out who that person is. But at the same time, and I think when I've talked to Craig, and he mentions that identity, the way to be private is to have more and more transactions, like unique transactions. So if I'm constantly having transaction with Kevin or Tai or Lou, Chao Wei, then I'm not going to be private enough. So in order to be private, I'm going to need to have more and more transactions. So I think SPV, once we start building applications on SPV, I think that privacy part is going to come, and I think it's going to be more clear for us what this, what Craig and Satoshi really meant in terms of identity and privacy and firewalls, and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I agree with you guys. Identity is more like all of me. It's not just a social security number, or it's just not just private key and a public address, or anything for that matter, that doesn't define our whole identity. It's whole of us. I think finally with Bitcoin, we have that realization that it is possible to do that or build that into applications. And that's, just wanted to add that couple, that thing here. But yeah,
I think the more it's like one of the things for privacy is being able to change your address every not reuse. So that's a big part of it. But I feel like the more, like, let's say you only have one address and then you start doing more and more transactions, those are like the connection points.
Yep.
And then there's more evidence that that's who you are from all these other people. But I think but as far as having more transactions in the network, like let's say instead of there only being 10 transactions per block, there's 1 million, then it'd be much harder for somebody to kind of browse through the transactions and follow things. So as the transaction count increases, it gives us more privacy. I think that's part of the more transactions bit.
Yeah.
Because imagine like you're in a courtyard at some plaza and you're in it, and there's all these people talking and there's all this noise. There's a sense of privacy when you're talking that nobody's listening, even though there's all these people around, which is kind of a bizarre thing. The same thing is true in restaurants. Or like, so sorry to interrupt. You're going to say something, Samir.
No, definitely. Yeah, I fully agree with you. What you mentioned. And Bitcoin is so beautiful that, like for somebody, say, because it's an economic system, right? So if we become so private, then we can, we being a human, we can start deviating our mind and start doing bad things. But it's not really possible to do that because because as soon as you register as a bad actor, as one of the peers can register you as a bad actor, it automatically we can check the Bitcoin network and registry, and all of a sudden, all these transactions that started can come together and create a 51%, like a consensus and get rid of that bad actor as soon as possible. And at the same time, you can still be private with doing as many transactions as you can with new public addresses and so forth. And as long as you're following the protocol and rules, you can be so private. So this is such a beautifully created design.
I would say it is private to a point. However, even in the case where there are lots of transactions and blocks, given a single actor, you can sort of trace their UTXOs in this graph and figure out where their money, you can infer, you can start to infer certain things, based on the behavior of their wallet and everything else. You can kind of trace things back and follow things a little bit. There is it records every interaction in such a way that all of the inputs, of course, can be correlated if they're used in the same transaction, and such things like that. So I agree that having more transactions on the network and having more connections with more people will improve privacy. But I think, going to what your point was, that the level of traceability does not necessarily diminish. So if somebody, if I am seen as doing something wrong, now there's a record of that, and just as there's a record of me doing something right. So having all of these interactions recorded would help to create a system where everything gets registered, and so therefore the identity itself can be sort of not necessarily stored on chain, but derived from the things that a person has done, and that person can then be ascribed a sort of reputation, if you will, not by an algorithm like how we have with a number, like it's not like where you're walking around in wearing these AR glasses and everybody around you has this little rating with 5 stars above their heads, and how many stars does this person
social
have
score? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Black
I mean,
hero,
it wouldn't be like that. It would be more unconscious. I mean, we have social credit scores in the physical world. We have for thousands of years. It's just they're unconscious. We don't actually create an algorithm that describes how they can work, and that's a very good thing, because algorithms can be gamed, and we don't want to have an algorithm that can be gamed that enables somebody to, just figure out a way to make themselves the most credible person in the entire world, that would be quite dangerous. But
well, I think part of the way that we scale civilization is by creating these what you used, algorithms is the word.
I don't know if
but well, think about it like this: like before we had money, we would keep track in our head of who owed who what, and we still do that in our families. Like, oh, you took out the trash, you did the dishes, and so I kind of owe you by opening the door, or all this kind of stuff. But you can't, there's like a number, I think it's Dunbar's number. You could only keep track of 150 people in a reciprocal way like that. And so once you get above Dunbar's number, you need to actually have these things above people's head. Not that I want, that's kind of a silly idea, but the ability to use money, and then we actually, keep score that way. It allows us to interact with millions of people that are using the same currency instead of just our family or our local little tribe. So, but then you were talking about traceability. And I also wanted to add to that is that, yeah, you can still trace, even though if there's millions of transactions per block, as long as somebody is keeping their address the same, you can trace through it all really easily. But if they're constantly using new Bitcoin addresses for every transaction, then it becomes harder to trace. And then I had the interesting thing of, sorry for rambling, but I had the interesting idea that actually you still have evidence that it's you across all these different addresses. But from the outside looking in, it's hard to. Yeah, but also if your identity is defined by all these other people, your identity is kind of defined by all these interactions. And so I don't know, maybe in some instances you'd want to use the same address, or maybe if you have like trees of, like, let's say your wallet breaks down these things, you want to reveal like one hierarchy, like one branch, but you still have multiple branches of like the wallet. Deterministic
hierarchical keys, yes.
Yeah, but imagine instead of just having like one branch, you have like multiple layers of branches, and then you can still stay private, but you can reveal that this branch is actually you, and all of these addresses below it. That, I think that would be useful.
I had a section in this paper that I wrote a couple of years ago called "Computing with Integrity." I think I may have alluded to it before, and this is in the context of a file system in which we have two sets of BIP32 key trees, one for reading data from the file system, which can decrypt, and one for writing data to the file system, which has the ability to sign transactions, which make updates to the various nodes, or in this case, keys or addresses that would be associated with single files in that file system hierarchy. And then the section that I had was the ability to share. So this is in the context of a file system, but it's very related to what you're saying. The ability to share selectively. So if I want to share a folder with somebody and grant them only read-only access, I would give them a copy of the read node of that particular point in the file system tree, and then every subnode of that would then be able to be derivable, and then they could derive and decrypt every file and subfolder and every file inside of each of the children of that particular node, but without being able to go back and read all of my files that I have everywhere else. And then in the same vein, granting them read-write access would just involve giving them access to the keys that could be used to then create and sign new transactions that make updates to that. But how that relates to identity is that the identity that people have really is defined by the interactions they make with others. I mean, what I am at the end of the day is how I act in every context and every interaction that I have made with every other person who I'm communicating with and who I've done business with in the past. And Bitcoin is really just a system for registering and defining the interactions. I mean, every transaction that is important has multiple parties, and unless it's just for journaling and record keeping on an internal thing. And so each of those transactions is available to both of the parties or to all of the parties involved without necessarily being available to the entire world, unless one of the parties wants to come forward and provide proof that this interaction did in fact occur, and here's the context, and they have the evidence and the ability to do that. So having the ability to register those interactions and and make every interaction that exists into a Bitcoin transaction, which tracks these things, gives a very new way of asserting ownership, but also asserting reputation on the chain. Because now if Bob sends me a message and says something absolutely horrible, I have the ability as the recipient of that message to, prove like, yes, this is something that this person interacted with, this is a negative interaction that I had with this person, and I can share that. And even if I don't know who Bob is, I don't have any, common connections with him, he's not in my social circle. Well, guess what? He has a social circle. And so by sharing that and by making it known that this is something that he said, even if it's, unacceptable, maybe he behaved in a very negative way. Guess what? Now his social circle is going to look at him differently, and they're going to change his position on the hierarchy. And they're going to say, well, wait, you actually said that? That's now I'm going to look at you differently. You know what I mean? And that's something that Bitcoin enables, is any party to a transaction or any party to an interaction that occurs between people is now able to be proven and shared in a wider context by, like, well, yeah, here's the specific key that decrypted that particular message that he said. So yes, it was encrypted, but guess what? I'm the one who received it. So I have the right to share to the world that this is something that somebody said. And that's the power of being able to do this stuff on Bitcoin. It enables ownership in that way. And it also enforces accountability, because anybody who interacts now has to be conscious of what they're doing, because it could affect them, because it can be proven. And that's really something that couldn't really be done before, I don't think. Not without trusting a platform.
Yeah, just wanted to add, but when it comes to reality, so in Bitcoin network, so if I'm sending some messages, especially to you, then it becomes a more of a peer-to-peer messaging. But if I'm sending something over into a public network, then there is no way, because of the privacy, there is no way for you to realize who sent that message to whom. So
you're saying it's anonymized.
Yeah, it's kind of like not anonymized, but more of a private, private in a public system. So it's very, very difficult for you to realize, whether that bad message is for me or for somebody else. But when it comes to this is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, is like, for us to but connecting the freedom and free will at the same time, having that rule based, or so everybody following the rule kind of thing, right? So it's, imagine, like, because free will is absolutely required. We can't just fall onto the rule, everybody following the same rule. It's the world is not gonna be a beautiful place. There has to be free will, there has to be freedom, so that we can create new things, which has not been created so far. So I wanted to add that, because it creates, so for someone like me, if I'm trying to create something brand new, which is maybe a first ever idea in this world, right? So, and this has never been seen before, and for people who have never seen that idea, it starts off with hesitancy, to accept that idea, right? So with Bitcoin, because I'm able to send this idea out to the public, and still be able to be private, it becomes easier for me to test that idea among the public, right? So if it automatically starts becoming acceptable, then people start using it, people start accepting that idea. But if people don't like it, the idea, then I can still be safe without having somebody, degrading my hierarchy, degrading my score in the hierarchy. So this is such a beautiful, because just like you mentioned, if I'm sending a bad message, consider that's a bad message for you, but technically it may not be a bad message for the entire system. So to test it, whether it's a bad message or a good message out in the public, if it's a first message, then it becomes an easier way to do it. And if I realize that, okay, it is indeed a bad message, if a lot of people are trying to attack that message rather than the messenger, then it becomes for me to realize, oh, yeah, this is indeed a bad message, so I should stop doing it. So I feel that, you know, I'm gonna start feeling the security, yet being able to test that idea, a new idea out in the public. And that's why I think Bitcoin is just beautiful the way it's designed, because, you know, it allows you to be public, you know, it allows you to be private in a public system. So yeah, I fully understand with you, and with peer-to-peer, with the SPV, it's gonna get even better, you know. So yeah,
Yeah,
just
I think what you're talking about is just the value of pseudonyms.
yeah.
And if we have this deterministic, I think that's right, or deterministic wallets where you can have this one key, but then generate predictably all these other addresses. But then instead of just having one layer, you have another layer and then another layer.
Like a tree.
Then
Yeah.
you can, yeah, like a tree. So you can create, like, let's say a sub-identity that's a pseudonym, and you can be, you know, like engaging and creating touch points and building an identity around it. Because every time you transact with somebody, you build more of an identity. So that sub-identity can be like its own thing. But if you know, if you don't want to reveal that that's you, you don't have to, and unless somebody compromises your upper level identities. But I think we all do that. We have to realize that all of us have different sub-identities in day-to-day life. And I think one of the shame of social media was that we just have a single identity. And that's, you know what I mean? It's like, and it really limits humans. Like if you look in real life, like there's certain circles, like maybe the people at the gym, they never, like I have a bunch of friends there, but it's completely separate from my BSV friends.
They don't know about Bitcoin. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't
gym
necessarily,
bros?
I don't want to merge them. I don't want to ever merge them. And not that they would be a bad thing, but it's just there's no
benefit.
I don't know. I'm trying to think in my mind, why wouldn't I want to? They're just like, it's like oil and water. They're just different things. They don't mix well. Like I remember when I had
perhaps.
Say that again.
A separation of concerns, as in the
separation of concerns, yeah. But like also it's almost like an efficient, like it's like an organizational thing. It's like I remember when I used to have Facebook, and I'd have this one friend that I met in sort of like health and wellness. And I have a lot of friends that are not at all interested in health and wellness. But then my health and wellness friend would start posting things on my main feed that everybody could see. And I almost try and keep the health and wellness stuff because it makes people that aren't interested uncomfortable, that, oh my gosh, is that theory actually right? And I just wanted to separate. I just didn't want to mix them at all. And so, and it wasn't even for some nefarious reason. It's just like, I don't want to make this person uncomfortable who isn't interested in health and wellness, but I still have a lot in common with them in other areas of my life. I don't want to start talking about this other thing that's going to make them feel uncomfortable. So there's really nice, good reasons for wanting to separate these things. And I think being able to have the sub-identities, that's actually very useful. So, but then you, at the root hierarchy, that's your identity, and you have all these different sub-identities, and you can prove that that's you if you really need to. And then the last thing is that we also have to keep in mind, though, that no matter what we do, there's always going to be the real Kevin and then the keys. And so just like with the social security, so there has to be some sort of way of recovering that. And so there has to be a way of the actual physical human saying, wait, I lost my keys, or wait, that actually wasn't me. And then there has to be a way of all these different people, you know, like you have to go to these other people in real life, and they have to say, okay, this was Kevin, but now we have to, you know, now he's saying
that line in time and say, well, at this point there was a compromise, and everything after that has to be ignored. And that's the highest order puzzle. What I think about doing here is defining some sort of like an sCrypt contract in which we tokenize we make the person into a single Satoshi UTXO, and we then need to have all of their root keys or encrypted copies of them, or however we want to deal with that, or just representations, the public keys. Well, you wouldn't make your root expub even public, because then you'd be revealing everything forever. So that would create a slight problem, wouldn't it? But having a token that represents it, and then having different spending constraints. So one of them could be, well, I changed my single password, so therefore I need to rewrap my root keys in different auth factors and whatever. And so that could be one case for spending. But another case for spending could enable the root keys to be rotated. So the UTXO could be spent forward in a way that says, well, the reason why this UTXO is being spent forward is because I am still the same person, but the keys need to be rotated. So therefore, having a constraint there that allows, or having I say a constraint, I mean a spend condition that allows, like a public function, I guess, as I'm learning sCrypt a little bit, that allows those sorts of things to happen. So maybe a combination of government and whatever else. Or it could just be like how Craig is talking about, where you get a court order in the UTXO, even though it only contains one Satoshi. I mean, it does represent your entire identity after all. Could be reassigned or recovered or brought back. Yeah. And normally, I mean, gosh, if a person loses their entire identity, I think that's going to be a really big deal. And usually the police are going to be involved, and it's going to be this enormous life event that people are going to remember and learn from, because it's like, well, I lost everything that was me in the digital world, and also probably to a point in the physical world, because we're integrating a lot of these things together with like keys that can unlock houses and cars and whatever else. I mean, if you lose all of that, and if it's just gone, yeah, that's a big deal. And usually you're going to want to have, the police involved, and or some service that is specialized in recovering your identity and getting it back and restoring order to your life in a way. That's going to be necessary.
Reminds me a lot of like a Hollywood, spy movies. You just wake up and then you lost your identity. It's like you're a CIA agent. Now you wake up, it creates a slight problem, to your house. It's a different owner. Your wife doesn't recognize you. Whatnot. Yeah, it's that's why I'm super interested. I think probably you guys are keeping an eye on this Craig's versus Aaron Kleinman, the Florida case, in about 2 weeks.
Interesting.
That would be like I think it's more fascinating than like a movie to me. The plot is
me too. What's gonna like, I'm so interested to see what's gonna happen with this whole industry, the whole like crypto.
It's
so useless at this point. Like the fees are so high to transact, and it's just this huge bubble. And if you just Google like Ethereum, like nobody ever talks about use cases anymore. It's just all the results you get on YouTube. It's just like, I'll do an experiment. I'm going to YouTube. When I said Google, I meant a YouTube search. Sorry.
It's I think it's a Rich Newhouse.
Here we go.
Or is this something? BDC is like
well, yeah, but in the olden days, it used to be use cases. And now I literally just type this in now. And if you go down, nobody ever talks about use cases. It's these people with the silly faces. Like it just goes on and on.
It's a criminal enterprise for storing money. There's lots of criminals who believe that, they've got billions of dollars into these assets, and they think, well, my money's safe because after all, I have the private keys and nobody else has the private keys. And that means that everything's going to be fine, right?
Yeah, right? That's the biggest
I think that's part of it.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it, but I also think a lot of it's just the bubble. It's just like any speculative bubble. It's like these people don't care about the technology, and if they cared about it, even to the slightest degree, with some research, they would know that this thing is just a piece of junk. And yet, all of the topics are just about price right now, and so there's no way this is going to last. But I think I'm curious once, sorry to keep on interrupting, but I'm curious once and because this is how we started it. Once in court, it's proven that Craig is Satoshi. What's going to happen? Is it going to continue for a little bit, or is it just all going to crash right there?
Yeah, I shared one article. I just shared one article in the thread. I don't know. I think it's very, very good article talking about different scenarios, how this is going to play out. Yeah, definitely check this out.
Okay.
Yeah. And this guy wrote.
Say something, Ty? Sorry for not. Go ahead. Shall I?
Yeah. I read all this guy's video. Yeah, no articles. It's very logical, and it's a little bit long, but definitely worth reading. I read every article from this guy. He's like a patent lawyer. I think in Southern California too. I think it's in Los Angeles. Yes.
Cool. I'll check him out. Just the fact that he's being sued by somebody so close to him, saying that, it's just like the fact that the court case even exists should be enough of a hint. Satoshi. Yeah. Who else would sue for this much and go through all this trouble?
They were twisted. It's read the article. It's already played out. They were twisted. They're saying, Kleiman invented this thing, and then Craig steal his ideas. Now he's dead, so he tried to claim he's Satoshi. Yeah, that's how they're going to twist it, according to this guy.
I wonder once it's revealed, like if all these crypto bubble investors, if they're going to just say like, oh, he's
still,
Craig tricked the courts or something. It's like, oh my God. I wonder.
I think those
it can't last.
Those allegations are definitely going to come because unless the thing is only Craig knows he's Satoshi. We can go as far as like 99% with the evidence that he provides, but for us to absolutely believe it's going to be absolutely it's going to be always a bit difficult. But I'm I'm 99% confident Craig is Satoshi, or Craig wrote the white paper and he named himself as Satoshi, or he used that name and so forth. But I think the people really define the problem is it's people disconnect identity with people connect identity with private key and the value of this just like time. It's Bitcoin just a construct to organize a society we created. So Satoshi created, right? So you can't really separate. It's important that we have to separate the identity from this ledger. Identity is such a massive thing that we can't just relate that to a private key. And if he says if Craig spends that Satoshis from his earlier Coinbase transactions, and then all of a sudden he becomes Satoshi. That's not possible. That's not identity. Anybody can steal that identity. It's still that private. That doesn't define identity.
Yeah, and that's what Craig has been saying. Is that's what these people want.
Yeah,
they want people to think that your key is your identity. Yeah, because then they can steal people's stuff. But there's a messier process, which is that actually our key is just a key.
It's a human process.
It's a human process. And that's what he's been trying to communicate, I think. And this whole, him being Satoshi or not is like really it's like what's the right word? It's like a microcosm of the whole problem of identity that we have to work out.
Yeah.
Well, it's
like how do you prove identity? And what'd you say?
It's a good thing that it happened, because imagine a world in which those keys were not lost, or I predicate this on those keys being lost or compromised in some way, because then we would actually probably be better suited to a belief.
Okay, Jeff from Pearson. Okay.
Hi guys.
Nice to meet you.
Hey Jeff.
Welcome here. We're talking about Vitalik. Vitalik is talking about Satoshi's keys. So
I'm not. there's many reasons why I'm not Vitalik.
Show him your shirt, Ty.
Show him again. Yeah.
Oh, so he understands what you're talking about.
I'll have to stand up.
Yeah,
there we go.
Okay.
That's the shirt that I wore.
So, it was just a joke because he.
You look like a little bit of like him. Yeah, from like a lot from if I look at you from far away. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Thai just looks like. I think during the conference, a lot of people were coming to Thai and talking about, hey, you look like Vitalik, and I think it does look like Vitalik in some ways.
Well, there's a reason why I'm not Vitalik, and that's
Just
what I lay
smarter,
out
yeah.
with. Well, that's why I built Babbage, is because I'm not Vitalik. Babbage would not be built by Vitalik.
You have your own identity, right?
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, I don't think Vitalik does. I think his identity is stored in global state somewhere, and he'll have fun trying to mutate it in any capacity without paying $10 in fees every time. But what I was originally saying was something to the effect that it's a human process that we have to go through. And if these keys were not, lost or compromised or whatever the case may be, or maybe they're even not, but we're just using this as an educational
they may
exercise.
not even be compromised.
I mean, wouldn't that be something after the coins move, then it's like, oh, by the way, just wanted to prove a point here, but yeah, here's the.
Well, I think that honestly, he still has the keys. It's just it's set up in a legal structure where it's by the trust or the trust.
I really don't know.
Technically,
I mean, speculating on that
I don't know. But the confusing part was that when those people did, we are all Satoshi and the whatever. But I think they just got like a small portion of his keys. They didn't get all of them. But I think it's just a legal structure. And then if he did move them, there'd be a tax implication. There's just a bunch of complicated stuff. But I think convoluted, he probably still has the keys. But either way,
who really knows?
Who really knows?
I mean, yeah, it's a human structure, and it's a human system, and it's a human problem. And I mean, having courts reassign is very important, because if that wasn't the case, then yes, those people would have a very good claim to these sorts of things. Having somebody, having somebody believe that this is the way that identity should exist in terms of just keys and code is law and all of this stuff. I mean, what I was originally, I think I finally remembered what I was originally going to say, which was something about the value of these coins. I think the value of the coins are the value of these cryptocurrencies that are, if their value proposition is that your keys are your, basically keys equal coins and identity and everything, take that away. And that's going to be interesting, because now the coins are faced with a choice. They're faced with a choice. Do I want to, so for example, Monero is a very good example of a coin that I would say is very oriented towards your keys, your coins, like this dark private, whatever they're trying to do, anonymous currency. That is something that, I mean, it's something that I guess is I don't know what to think of it, except for that we take that away, and then what are they? They're nothing. And so they'll have to choose to go ahead.
Yeah, I think at a small level, just tying, we talked about the value of the pseudonym. Like there is some value in having these disposable parts of your identity, so to speak, and for legitimate reasons. But just like the ring of Gyges or whatever, like if you want to build a stable system, you can have like the human to human way of proving identity, that's a stronger base. That's like a better foundation. And then on top of that, you can build these little, meaningless private disposable parts of your identity, but the foundation of the whole system has to be based on the human law. But what they're trying to do with these other ones is build the whole foundation on this disposable thing, but that's not going to scale, because it's not based in anything in reality. If they wanted to have, like, you can have these little disposable parts of your identity. And I'm sure, like, I think I remember in Theory of Bitcoin, Ryan Charles saying something like, if they wanted to be legal, they should have built the cryptocurrencies on BSV or something. So this is a long time ago, and I don't think I totally understood what he was talking about. But like you can probably build something that's very, very private on top of BSV. But you can't take this very, very private system and then build BSV on top of it, if that makes any sense. It's like you can't build a skyscraper on top of a swamp, but you could have a little swamp at the top of a skyscraper. You need to have a solid foundation to support these little kind of stupid things. And like Craig has said, like, you know, nobody's going to worry about a $50 transaction. Like a little hot wallet that has $50 worth, it's basically, you know, uncensorable, so to speak. But if it's tied to something that's that's very valuable, it's tied to all your home records, it's tied to all the stuff that we actually want to be very secure to our identity. We don't want that just to be on a key that can be stolen. That's not stable. So we want that stuff to be able to be human to human law. But then if you just want to have a $5 thing, just like people use cash,
exactly,
to buy a lotto ticket, and they don't want people to know that they're buying a lottery ticket or something, it's not that harmful, but it's just something that you want to keep private, right? It's that's still going to be possible. It just only happens in small values.
Yeah.
But
in fact,
these
with
people want the
SPV,
cryptocurrencies. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, with SPV, it allows you to be, you know, absolutely private. You know, like you know, even for larger transactions, you know, with the Merkle proof and whatever is available, yeah, you can still be private and absolutely do a peer-to-peer transaction, but still be able to register just in case, like for an attestation, just in case if something goes wrong, you get that attestation from the larger network, the Bitcoin network. But I think like Satoshi's first line, you know, on the white paper says it's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So it's meant to be peer-to-peer, and I think without SPV you can't really have a peer-to-peer. You know, it's just, I think the beautiful thing about
run your own node.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, I think there's a like Kevin, you're mentioning, there's a whole, I think that network is doesn't understand human, you know, how we interact with people. You know, the human law is completely forgotten. It's like creating this you know, virtual network where you know, it's that human doesn't exist. I think that's not, yeah, that's not going to scale.
That doesn't scale. That's not going to work at all.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
Yeah,
I was saying a peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Exactly, it's just a system to assist humans. You know, we can't create a system where human doesn't exist at all. You know, it's like a singularity. It's like a you know, it's like a technical, you know, technological singularity. That's what you know, it's the core network is envisioning. You know, and although I hate to say that I'm a big, you know, I don't like the vision that they have, but you know, in the past, the way, you know, even like Einstein created something beautiful with E equal to mc squared, but people started creating, you know, bombs and then started destroying. So, you know, and there's the possibility that, you know, if we don't, like from the BSV community, if we don't act, or if we don't, you know, take this idea that, you know, we're trying to create a beautiful system using, you know, human organization, human you know, society using the Bitcoin network. I think we, you know, like with how BTC is going, and you know, with how it's being adopted and so forth, there is a possibility that, you know, that path keep on continuing. And I think we have to make our voices louder, that we want to create something beautiful for humans, not just, you know, it seems like BTC is going to create a technological singularity where, you know, humans won't exist. Everything is going to be, you know, like, you know, yeah, I don't know how to say it, but
it's just a very short-sighted view that they have, and so it's never going to scale. But the one that actually accounts for humans. Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah. There's something to be said for the fact that these silly bombs and everything, sort of the entire premise of modern civilization and all the technology that we have is sort of predicated on top of this idea that these bombs could destroy us at any particular moment in time. And it did lead to a fairly good outcome. I mean, there was this slight problem in the 80s with the Chernobyl and everything, and that might have been a side effect that was maybe not intended, but by and large, I mean, it worked out fairly well. And so having that, I see what you're saying with the arms race, so to speak, between BTC and BSV in terms of what they're trying to create versus what we're trying to create. But I don't see it as something that they're going to succeed at doing, because I mean, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system depends on a human-to-human paper law system, which is just all of these written laws and things that are necessary in order to even have a foundation that would be able to support a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I mean, we need to have this foundation, and it does, as Kevin said originally, need to be found based on these premises of law before we can even start to think about any of this stuff. I mean, if you don't have law, then what you have is chaos, and in a chaotic system, you're not incentivized towards growth. You're not incentivized towards any of these other. You can't think long term. You can't build and invest. You can't define a stable protocol, because somebody could say, well, your protocol might be better, but I have a bigger gun than you, so therefore, sorry about your luck.
This is my opportunity to finally say this, because I was thinking this a lot, because I've had a lot of talks where people keep on asking me like, well, what's your opinion about BSV being pro-law? And I'm like, what kind of question is this? Like, of course that's a good thing. But then I started realizing that the reason why people are asking this is because they don't have faith in our current lawgivers, so to speak.
Right. Same with this court case, right? People are saying, oh, you have to rely on this court system, which is, I mean, sometimes it's corrupted, but what's the better alternative? It just
and so what my point was that, and I can kind of agree with them that, like our legal system is far from perfect, but I think what we can say instead is, and with being pro-law, there is a legal structure that, when it works, allows for stable societies. Okay, and we work, and everybody has different opinions. Different countries try different things. But if you watch that Theory of Bitcoin video of what is law, I think it was like the fourth one, it really made sense to me that if you want to have stable long-term commerce across time, then you have to have a legal system that works. Because if you're going to do a 30-year investment, or you're going to take out a 30-year mortgage or whatever, like you're betting on the fact that legal structure will exist in 30 years. And we can't and there's some things in life that require long-term investment. And so in the same way that Disneyland will not open a park in Saudi Arabia, even though they've invited Disneyland there several times, they just don't think it's a stable enough structure. They're not going to invest all the resources in what it takes to build Disneyland in Saudi Arabia. Maybe one day they will, once they have proof that the government structure is stable. But in a similar way, if you want to have long-term investment where you're going to pile in all this money and expect to get a payout, you need to have a stable government. And so just to finish my point, and then I'll stop talking. But when we say we're pro-law, we're pro an understanding that we need to have the stable structure, and that humans, that's an issue between humans and all the common law going back, that's been evolving for thousands of years, is important. And it's like what Craig said at that talk, says, I don't think throwing out English common law is important or is a good thing. Or I could phrase this better if I had planned what I was going to say, but sorry for rambling.
No, that's perfectly, I think one of the questions that I have as well, like how do we define law, right? And I think during the CoinGeek conference, we had guys from IRS and we had guys from compliance and regulatory bodies, and I had a question to these guys as well, because let's think about it, and let's think about how the incentive model in the current society and the law works, right? So IRS and all these organizations are created to catch criminals, to catch bad actors, right? And I mean, yeah, and then there's like enforcement and policemen and all that to make sure that society is a better place to live for everybody. But the way it really works in reality is like, say there are 100 people and there's only one bad actor, right? And there's 99 people who just are good people who don't know anything about this bad acting. So let's just like in Bitcoin, there's a UTXO model. So let's take about the acting, not the actor, but the acting. And that's why I think I like proof of work versus proof of stake, where it's account-based model versus UTXO, and I apply this to the real world applications, right? So in the current tradition, in the current system of law and policemen and enforcement and all this, so there's one bad acting and there's 99 good acting. And now when we create law, or we focus on this bad acting, right? And create laws so that now we educate people about the acting to the 99 people who are unaware of what that acting really was, and so forth. So all of a sudden, instead of really getting rid of the bad acting in society, we're actually creating new bad acting among these new people. And it's evident because just like if you look at and I asked this question to the guy who was from the IRS, and is your organization in IRS growing, or is it diminishing, right? Is it shrinking or is it growing, right? And his answer was it's growing. It's actually from yesterday to tomorrow and so forth. It's growing, and that's what the goal is. The goal is of their organization is to keep growing so that they can catch more criminals and so forth. But if the organization's goal is to reduce the amount of bad acting in the society, then the organization should be shrinking, right? Then they're not doing a good job of really getting rid of the bad acting if the organization is growing, and the people that work in the organization are incentivized to create bad actor. And it's not people's intention, but the economic model, the incentive mechanism says, if I'm working for an IRS, I want to I want to get paid, I want to survive, I want to feed my family and so forth. So I want to have more pay tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So the goal is, how do we fund that? The only way to be funded is to create criminals, is to create and so forth. It's not the intentions,
right? It's like the same problem with charity. It's like once a charity is set up, like let's say I don't want to get into it. Well, let's just say like a random thing for fixing some sort of health problem. If that health problem was solved, then all these people lose their job.
Yes, exactly.
And so they don't even work towards the solution anymore. But this is only when you have people that are really confused. I think well, not really confused, but that's maybe it's part of human nature. But people should have their clear intention, if they're working for the government or if they're working at a charity, that their work is to reduce that disease in the case of charity, or to get rid of cyber criminals. But the problem is when you have people that are born and raised in a government job, then there's no longer this distinction of, oh, I've built my career outside of this and now I'm contributing. This is my livelihood and I have to stay here. So I think that bureaucracies can get out of control. Go ahead.
Economical model doesn't match up because on the one hand you're trying to reduce the source of your funding. On the other side, you have a need to that source of the funding to keep coming. It's the economic model that's really to blame. I really don't blame people, because in my mind people are good. People, good humans, like all humans are good by nature. It's just
99%.
99%.
99.99.
Exactly. So by nature, I believe that humans are good people, or they're good. Whenever there's a choice between a bad and a good, most of the time, unless there is an external force, people always choose to be good. So I think, and that's my question, right? Why, when the economic model doesn't really allow you to do something, and that comes about Satoshi's white paper as well about honesty, and then so forth, because the financial system that we currently have with the inflationary monetary policies and so forth doesn't really allow us to create a society which is better off for humans. It creates, and I think that's why the 21 million supply and in more of a deflationary monetary policy or savings cultures and so forth is maybe a better way for society to, because and this is my thought process, but the current financial system doesn't really allow for people to be, even though willingly, even though if I intentionally want to help the society, but it doesn't allow me to do that because of the need versus want conflict. So yeah, but let's say
I think
I don't know.
incentives, how you structure incentives are really, really important. And yeah, I think if they get out of whack, you can make people do weird things. And
does create a slight problem. I mean, I guess I see the ideas around the people who are in enforcement not having an incentive to actually reduce the source of the problem, but only to combat its side effects while making the source worse, so they have more side effects to combat because that's how they get paid.
Right, it's like pharmaceuticals. Well, I don't want to say that kind of stuff, but
I know you're
don't want to
saying
get that. Okay, we don't want to get that.
I know, my natural health. Yeah. But what you said, just
hopefully by having incentives or having a level of transparency as to the flows of money into and out of certain organizations, that can maybe inform better policy decisions, and that could be a corollary with how this could be helped by sort of blockchain and transparency and those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we know where the money comes from and where it's going and those sorts of things, both in criminal networks but also in enforcement agencies and things, and maybe we could build better policies around it, and that could be a thing that's important. But I mean, talking about blockchain in this context is almost, I would say, I mean, it's very close to irrelevant, because this is a thing that a blockchain can be used as a tool to solve. It is a political problem that maybe we could try to define using blockchain a solution for, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's one of many, many things, and I don't know if it's something that
well, I think all these are related to, and I've watched this this early Craig Wright video. It's on the N-Chain channel, and it's called The End of Debt and Equity as We Know It, whatever. But it's when it's like one of Craig's first talks right after he said that he was Satoshi publicly, and then nobody believed him, whatever. But he talked about mercantilism, and he says what, and I don't know if this is like, he was kind of going all over the place in that presentation, but he said, so where does it start? And he says this idea of mercantilism, and it is almost as if, and I don't know if this is his intention, but it's almost as if he was presenting Bitcoin as a solution to mercantilism. But that doesn't make sense, because people can still do it. But what is mercantilism? And my interpretation of it was that it's when people start thinking, they start believing in the number or the currency value more than the idea of actually creating goods and services, right? And so how all this is related is that people get caught up in wealth being money. So whether it's with different types of solution, like with the IRS example that you're giving, where they don't want to actually have a society with less fraud, they just want to make sure there's more criminals so that they can have a steady income. Well, that's a really short-sighted way of looking at it. Because okay, go ahead. Yeah,
I just want to correct. It's not that their intention, but it's unintentionally being done. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Of course. And I think that it's only for a small, but I've seen that similar thing play out in medicine or whatever. So I agree that kind of stuff happens. But if but this is somebody who's infected with mercantilist thought, where they think that the money is more important than the healthy society. Right. And so what we need to do, is realize, and I don't think this can be solved with a new form of money. I think maybe it'll help create a new thing, but what people really have to get in their mind is that money isn't wealth. It's just a tool. But when people are starving and they really need money, or they're living paycheck to paycheck, that's a really hard sell because they're desperate for the money. And so there needs to be
at that point, it's education, I would say. Just educate people. And that's very tough. I mean, how do we educate people? And I was talking with Craig during the conference. We had a small discussion about distributing wealth and helping these poor people. And what I came up with as a suggestion, I says, well, why don't we just get, and this is not a new, this is a very, not my idea, but part of it is, the part that's not my idea is, well, why don't we just get a bunch of Kindle Fire tablets and preload them with versions of Wikipedia and Project Gutenberg and all this stuff, and then drop them onto over these North Koreas and South Sudans and Venezuelas and other types of countries. But the other part that was, I think, partially my idea is, and then we can have these devices communicate in a peer-to-peer, self-healing mesh. And I wrote a paper called Project Sigma that talks about a very rudimentary way of starting to be able to define this, and then give them a little bit of Bitcoin on each of these devices, which they can then use to have a common way of exchanging value between one another, a common way of communicating that doesn't require infrastructure. And then, of course, maybe a solar charger or something like that was also suggested as a way to keep these devices powered. And then they would have a way of building knowledge, a way of conveying value, and a way of communicating with one another to organize hierarchies that are based on value instead of based on what these tyrannical regimes are pushing. And that could be an interesting way of trying to get education in the hands of more of these people. In Western culture, though, it's even tougher because the people don't even want to be educated. Sometimes they reject all of this information that exists. And so finding ways to organize information in such a way that we can present the best information to the most people is the challenge. And for that, it goes back to what you were talking about, Kevin, originally with this word cloud idea for information presentation based on time, as well as the peacock's tail effect of like a boost POW type solution. And a lot of these things are still developing, but those might be some solutions which we can look at to address some of these problems that are basically go all the way back down to the fundamentals of this is just things that people don't fully understand, and we need to get them to understand and to think and to be able to create value. And if we can do that, then I think we can start to move the needle on these issues, but only only by going literally all the way back down to the like we said, fundamentals like education and value creation and understanding what value really is.
I think ultimately it goes back to the education and just understanding, money is just a tool. It's not your source of wealth and stuff like that. And understanding how capitalism works and how it scales better than any sort of whatever.
Yeah, it never really hits a scale system. Capitalism never really hits a scale ceiling, does it?
Scale limit. Okay. Big blocks.
Nope. Yeah.
Jeff, you want to chime in because we are talking about money is just not wealth. I think we were talking about this a few days ago. You're talking about one of the discovery for the Pearson objective is to, not only to use it to, when you tip somebody something, it's not only just for the cash value. It also has a lot of other social or societal implications.
Yeah, so the thesis of Pearson is, if we allow people to transfer money through billions of, the social platform connected to billions of people, then we allow micropayment, then a mind alone can be wealth. So like he said, the mercantilism versus physiocracy, it's just not about accumulating money for people who are able to accumulate money. because it's like Spain when they sort of try to you know,
Gold, pot of
accumulate gold against
Yeah, they just got a bunch of gold and imported it and inflated their whole society.
yeah. Whereas France, they focused on the physiocracy, which is the whole economy was based on the agricultural value at that time. So that's how they sort of grew. Where Spain kind of went down. But the societal value of Pearson is not really, because the whole cryptocurrency right now is purely based on mercantilism, because you put your money in to try to maximize the profit by accumulating, like staking, for example. That's just a pure example. But where is sort of physiocratic, way of making money? Oh, you could build businesses, you could build a real utility, but that's just not we've been doing this for centuries, right? So how do you sort of innovate in a way that a people who are living under $2 a day, but have a brilliant idea or a brilliant mind that can inspire others, or I don't know, do something because they're connected to the internet, then how do they make hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars through Pearson?
That's really powerful.
Yeah, but it's just
Yes.
like I think it boils down to my distinction of the people who are in the crypto or the sort of the modern finance and the BSV is that represented by Craig and George Gilder and these people is the whether the worldview that you have, whether you see the world as deterministic system or the probabilistic system, right? So the people in the modern world, they view the world as a deterministic system. So smart contract as law, the code is law, everything is deterministic, sort of Newtonian worldview that they have. That's why they just want to, like going back to the identity talk, that's why they want Craig to prove with the key, because they think that the identity is sort of like deterministic system where you can just proclaim who you are, but it's never like that, because identity is it's a combination of third-party claims. It's never proclamation of yourself.
Edges.
It's like, sorry?
It's edges, not about the node. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
we
edge,
talked
it's
about
edge,
this.
edge protocol.
Okay, you
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, it's edge protocol. So, yeah, I mean, I really think that Craig, I really think that we sort of forgot about the history and the sort of textbook knowledge that it's been passed on. The whole idea of physiocracy, or even in the domain of computing, they forgot about Gödel's incomplete theorem. They forgot about Turing's oracle issue that Craig talks about. They just completely forgot about it. They just introduced randomness to the computing so that they could have, I don't know, deterministic sort of machine that can act like human. We're just never gonna have that. So so it's
ultimately.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ultimately, we're building tools to help people produce goods and services and exchange them. And people, and I'm going to link this in our thread, but people get lost in the numbers and the metrics instead of actually producing goods and services.
Create
I
value.
just sent it in the thread. Yeah. And money, as Craig says in this video that I linked, money is a call on the future goods and services of society. So if you own 2% of the money, then you get 2% of the goods and services of the future of whatever that society creates. But if you just forget about the goods and services part, and nobody's producing goods and services, it's kind of like in the crypto economy right now. Everybody's just playing with these numbers. Well, what is it linked to? It's not linked to anything. I mean, right now, sure, we have the exchanges where you can put it back into US dollars, but it's just like a casino at this point. You can't buy anything with this stuff.
Casino capitalism.
It's casino capitalism. And eventually, once it gets detached, or the United States ends the banking for these exchanges or whatever, it's going to be completely useless. But if it was actually tied to goods and services, then it would have value. And so we want our money to be tied to goods and services. I just got another comment. Here's, just as we were talking about this, here's somebody saying, why doesn't he prove by just moving his keys? God dang it, person.
Well, there's this passage in
like,
Atlas Shrugged, and it says, not your kind of world. And it repeats that in several different contexts. And that is the reason why Craig would not move keys in that way, because not your kind of world in which that is meaningful. Right. Not your kind of world in which that is the way that in which that is a significant thing that matters most above everything else. Right. And exactly. really, I mean, yeah, because were he to do that and have it be the most meaningful, biggest headline ever, that says a lot about the world in which we live, where that kind of value is what is held highly. Oh, this person signed a key, or this person moved coins using a specific key. Like, that shouldn't be what. Like, I guarantee if that were to happen, it would be #1 news headline. It would be an AP flash across whatever they say, and it would be this giant event. But that shouldn't be the case, and that's I think what's being said there. And there's something to be said about that. Like, that's important, and people have to realize that.
Yeah, that's just one component of the identity node. So I mean, we just cannot ignore that the signing key aspect of it, because it's just one part of the node that increases the probability of him being Satoshi. So he needs to sign eventually. He needs to sign to prove him as Satoshi as a one evidence, but he needs to have other evidence, other claims attached to him as a sort of like a attestation to his claim in order to prove him as a Satoshi. I mean, no matter how people want to look at the world as deterministic, like it's always driven by the probabilistic system. Like, imagine you go into open a bank account, right? So they ask you your ID, which is one claim, and they also ask you the sort of bill paper that you receive to your house, utility bill. That's the other claim. So you need to have a combination of multiple claim, which creating no edges to sort of increase the probabilistic, but never to the point where it's deterministically his identity, but safe enough for banks to so the court is basically it's never. I mean, even with the court judicial system, the world is never deterministic, but the judicial system exists because we want to draw a line where this is enough of a probability, probabilistic claim that you have. So we'll just make a legal line to make it deterministic enough, although they make mistakes. So yeah, Craig needs to have multiple claims, including the signing key or something like that.
I don't agree that it has to include the signing of the key, but I do agree that, I mean, having multiple pieces of evidence is important. I think. Yeah,
it's not necessary, but that's one of the claims that he could use, and the judicial system might require. So yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
That's why
the other refutation of determinism would be the last 128 bits of every block hash is going to be some pretty high entropy random data. Because if you spent the first, you're talking about the proof of work and you're getting all these leading zeros, the last part of that hash, which isn't leading zeros, is going to be some pretty high entropy random data right there. And so that's a pretty good way of refuting determinism on its own. Just using the last little bit of every block hash as a random oracle for things, because now you can't determine what that's going to be in the future without doing all of the proof of work and ordering every transaction from every event that everybody has ever done in a specific way, and then knowing what that number is going to be in the future. So there's a good refutation of determinism in and of itself.
Yeah, a great point about having a planning for the future, deterministic future based on a probabilistic model of a society, because we live in a probabilistic. We can never be absolutely 100% about everything. It's just a probability. So you know, if we try to determine with certainty, with 100% certainty, that this is how it's going to end up being, then I think that's already a failure to start with, because you know that never is going to happen unless, like Ty, we're talking about time, and you know, if there is no time, like, because you know,
Oh,
we all,
I remember.
yeah, we all relate to you know, the truth. That is the time, right? The flow of time, and we reference.
You can define a state machine in terms of what happens. You know, you can write a pure function as I was describing on top of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is a human system that is subject to the rules of human law that can go back and define things in different ways and ascribe different meanings. And so you get to do all of those fun things, but only after accepting and becoming educated about the necessity for building a human-oriented system at the base layer. So yes, you can do finite state machines and deterministic things on top of Bitcoin that leverage transactions. In fact, that's what Bridgeport is. I mean, I think I would know that's possible because I'm creating an entire system that enables that, and people are going to figure out in the next month or so that all of these things are going to be really, really cool. But it has to be built on a foundation that is subject to the rules of human order, and I mean, a human to human paper law system first, then a peer-to-peer electronic cash system afterwards.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
like my metaphor with, you can have skyscraper with a swamp on top, but you can't have a swamp with a skyscraper. So it's kind of the same thing. Somebody was going to talk.
Yeah, I think that's what George Gilder refers to as low entropy. So you need to have a low entropy domain in order to have a high entropy sort of innovation and stuff like that. So that's the high entropy carrier, a low entropy carrier in order to have a high entropy.
Yep.
So he views low entropy as law and order, and he also argues that the anarchists and sort of anarcho-capitalists, or that side, even libertarians, they believe that the orders can be simultaneous, like what was the word? The simultaneous order is that the word? Like the order can happen out of nowhere. So people just create order, and it's never
emergence,
the case.
Perhaps.
Yeah, emerging orders kind of thing. Yeah, it's never the case. It's always a brave man with, I don't know, some brave mind to start with something like low entropy carrier, and then it carries the high entropy the world. So the most low entropy thing is time, basically, and then we attach time to money now. So the money is tokenized time, like Gilder says. So it's the most low entropy, most deterministic thing ever that will create the high entropy, the probabilistic innovation that we have no idea of right now. So yeah, I think goes along with the line of George Gilder's argument, and that's pretty compelling to me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think like with anarchy, it's like if it's just a mess, then somebody's just gonna come in, and whoever has the most weapon power is gonna create an order. And so it's more of a power grab than anything.
And that's what happened originally. I mean, thousands of years ago, isn't that what happened? And it evolved into what we have now. Did anyone consider that?
Yeah, if you watch that Craig Wright video with Patrick, whatever his name is, but Valuetainment, I think is what it's called, or Edutainment, one of those two. But yeah, it's like, we're going to tear down society and replace it with what?
With exactly what we had before.
This question. Yeah, it's like, why this isn't at all the goal of Bitcoin, was not to tear down society, is to make it better. And that he says that in that video I linked as well. So I think that's something that we're going to have to.
It doesn't need to be built back either. It could just be made better. It doesn't need to be torn down and then built back. Like I agree with the third word
payment system.
Yeah.
It's not a way of tearing down the world.
If anyone wants to start a business on BSB, they just need to listen to Craig in early days of Bitcoin, because
just educate yourself and then be honest and create value. Step one, educate yourself. Step two, be honest. Step 3, create value. Step 4, profit.
Profit.
Or rather, build wealth, right? Because
recipe.
profit is,
Well,
there's the recipe.
If you think about what we do right now, like what we have built, it's purely based on Craig's idea. So Craig started, he started Bitcoin. He started thinking about Bitcoin as working at a Lassiter's, the gambling company. So he must thought, I mean, he's a smart guy, so he must thought that that was a profitable business. So, we built a gambling service. In 2014, I mentioned it on the stage at CoinGeek. He talks about the Hotwire PE's product, which is Peer Bank. And he talks about how it has a social banking function with, changing interactions of human into internet and merging eBay and PayPal. That's exactly what we're doing in Pearson. So, and then the things that he talks about right now is not going to be a business until like a decade later. So it's probably smart to look into what
long-term thinking.
Yeah.
It's fun. I have a question. Like, when it comes to having honesty, like when you talk about honesty, because honesty is one of the key word that's been used in the white paper a lot, and I've been thinking about it a lot myself. Like when it comes to honesty, how can we really be in absolutely honest in this society where there's a conflict between the external versus internal? Like so honesty for me is being able to share exactly what I have to say, but at the same time there's this external society who is not educated about what I'm really going to say, and there might be a resistance. So how can I be honest when this idea is not even presented out there, and there's going to be a lot of resistance back? Knowing that resistance is going to be there, how can I be honest? It's such a difficult situation, and with the whole social the social dilemma, right? So that we have, and this has got me thinking a lot, and I think it also adds it's an analogy to pretty much everything that we're talking about, like low entropy and high entropy. There's a security where you have absolute security, and there's this need for freedom, and it all relates back to be able to be in a situation or be in a society where you can be absolutely honest. And as if like Kataya, I don't know if you remember when we were talking about the conversation of you being punched by somebody, and who is there.
Yes, I recall. Yes.
So we were just having a conversation. So if Tai is being punched, who initiated the punch, and how does Tai's role in that punching, the person who punched it, all relates back to, because we live in a society where it's a whole.
The originator of the action.
Yeah, the originator of the action, right? So we live in a society, because without both sides, it's really difficult to just point that this action is important, or this action is to be highlighted. So I think it all relates back to going back to honesty. How can we really be honest in this society when there's this natural conflict that exists? I think that's something that I've been trying to figure out for the last few years, and it's really difficult.
Well, we acknowledge the conflict, and then we. So go ahead,
one approach I'm thinking about is I don't know if you heard about this called focus not on the goal but on the system. I think it's first proposed by the guy called the Dilbert guy called Scott Adams. I think here is one thing is, as you talk about the IRS, right? I think it's not because of all the individual workers. They try to unite the organization, then try to catch more bad guys. It's just incentive, right? So we need to design it at the system level. So even though individuals, as you mentioned, right, we believe like most people are like decent people. So if they have a choice, everything else equal, they're going to make the good, decision. Hopefully, that's our belief, right? But a lot of time is even you're good people, but because the incentive is such that if you do the wrong thing, you can benefit. So then at the the RS also for. I mean, Kevin and me, and in California, I think the homeless issue keeps growing. And even though the money thrown at it is increasing every single year, but it just gets worse because the incentive, right? Who's going to solve the homeless problem? And then all these organizations, once you completely get rid of the homeless, they are gone, right? They lose the livelihood. So the same, I think the Bitcoin is a beautiful system in the same way. The miners, they can be dishonest, right? You can, but then you're losing your revenue, right? So the incentive such that if you are not honest, it's fine too, but you have come up with a huge cost. But you rather be honest. So I think it's the same thing with everything. I think it's humans going to human, but how we design the system such that the incentive is such that if you're honest, you're going to benefit, and otherwise you got to penalize. So, but how do you design that? It's almost like a, you know, got a game theoretic and whatever, but that's very hard to pull off. Yes.
Make a decision.
I feel
and
like
it gets recorded.
Great point.
I feel like for certain jobs, you have to already be financially independent before you start that job for different charity work or whatever. Because if you're just living paycheck to paycheck, then you are completely, your whole livelihood depends on this structure working. And so if the charity did solve homelessness and then it went out of business because it solved its problem, then you would be out of a job. But if you're already financially independent before you start working at this place, then as soon as it goes out of business because it solved homelessness, then you just have more free time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a
definitely.
debate in the time when they were forming the U.S. Constitution and during like the Federalist days, like what was it, 1780s and whatever. Should the representatives who are getting elected to Congress and to the Senate actually be paid? Should they actually, or should it just be a thing that they do because they want to serve people and then not actually have them get paid? And I don't remember why they said they decided that, you know, the representatives and the public officials who were working for the government should receive a salary, but that decision was made. It is interesting though, because that would really change the incentives around this stuff. I mean, imagine if all charities decided, well, you know, we're not going to pay anybody because all of the money we have is actually going to go towards our object and not towards people who are working towards it. And so it's going to get rid of all of these, you know, quote unquote employees who now lose their job suddenly. But at the same time, maybe that's a good thing because you're going to bring people on who now are not there for a financial reason, but they're rather because, you know, I mean, hopefully at least they want to pursue the objectives of the charities. I mean, that would be interesting. I don't know about policies that would mandate it or anything like that, but I mean, on an individual charity level, that could be interesting.
Just to amend my thing, just at the executive level, at least, I'm sure there's always going to be some amount of people that you have to just pay to
decision makers,
drive a truck or just basic stuff. But at the executive level, I don't think they should be paid. All right, go ahead, Samir.
Yeah, it's to that point. I think like and absolutely, you know, like any work should not be a based on need, but should be based on like want, right? So as soon as there's a, you know, and I think to begin with, like any job, any charity work, to like first ever charity work, right? So we're not talking about the denominations or you know, after time is passed. Like first ever charity work is would always be done by those person who is actually willing to help, and they're not expecting any kind of incentive or you know, and so forth. But the policy after because and I think they're the ones who will be doing the greatest job. Like first ever job will be the greatest job, right? And because that has provided such good for the society, now they want to create a policy or a law so that, you know, now we can continue doing good for you know, for the society going forward. As soon as that happens, I think that's where the problem really starts, because the new people want to do that job, to continue, you know, but for them it's not their desire, it's not their want, it's more like a need. Now they have to be paid for it, because it's not a naturally wanting to do that particular job. It's because we know this like low entropy thing, where, you know, we know that this is deterministic, this idea that you know, if we continue doing this, the world is going to be a better place, or that the doing charity will help going forward. But it only helps at that first job ever, like first ever charity. After that point, it starts becoming where you know, people want to go do that charity work is always incentivized by some kind of gain, some kind of expectation, and they won't ever do 100% job. Then the first person, then it keeps on deteriorating over time. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm trying to say, but basically, you know, the first ever job will be the one that where there's no expectation of any value or expectation of anything, any
Well,
incentive.
there should be some, objective, which is to end homelessness or to eradicate this disease. So there is some measurable thing, but it's just not measurable in terms of money.
Yeah, I mean, money is it's just a form of incentive, right? So there's a so when what I'm saying is like when you first start a charity, you start in terms of helping homelessness, and that does a great in the society. Now the problem starts when that becomes a norm, or that becomes a rule of law, that this is the only way the society is going to get better because that's going to help homelessness. Now the second the second layer, or the next person who starts doing that charity, it starts with an expectation. It starts with an effect, not a cause but an effect. So as soon as that happens, the results are going to be not as good as the first one. So as time progresses, as we progress, as more people start coming into it, then the original incentive of ending homelessness goes away, because it becomes more of an expectation kind of thing. And that's true to any kind of society, not just like this example, but any kind of society. The first job ever, even like Constitution, the first the people who were responsible for writing the Constitution, they did an amazing job. They did and they did it because it was they're wanting to do it. They had a full desire to do it, and now they see the benefit of it. They created it as a law, and now any people following that law, for them it's more of an expectation rather than rather than you wanting to do it. It becomes an expectation. So it's a need kind of thing. So it's a switch from want to a need, and as soon as that happens, it starts deteriorating. We don't get the same results that the first ever got. And I think that's what the society is all about as well. Like it's when you switch from a want to a need, then the productivity is goes down. And
I think that
that
all kind of relates back to that idea of mercantilism, at least as he defines it in this video I linked. But it's that when people start thinking of the numbers more important than the goods and services, is they're following this like procedural thing of, oh, we look at this number on the bank account as what's most important, or this pile of gold is what's most important. But the gold was just invented as a form of money in order to help us produce more goods and services. So they've completely lost sight of the big thing as it just being a tool, and they're just focused on the small thing. And so I think what we talked about earlier, and I agree with, is that education is really the way to solve a lot of these things. But it's difficult when people get lost in the metrics instead of the overall objective.
Yeah, even talk about the incentive wise, I think it's I saw this I saw this on Twitter. I would rather a billionaire to become the politician than a politician get into politics and then become a billionaire, because
absolutely, yeah.
So but a lot of people don't like this idea. It's like Trump, oh, he's a billionaire, he represents the rich. But if somebody is already self-made billionaire, that pretty much proves a lot of stuff he can already do. Then he gets into politics, rather than like a Nancy Pelosi, right? He's getting like a 200,000 per year, right? Now he's worth almost like a semi-billionaire. Where does she get that kind of money? So I'm not accusing all this party, but the incentive is messed up, right? So let's say just a COVID thing, right? So if I'm a politician, am I for this pro-lockdown and all this vaccines and stuff? So I'm holding a lot of vaccine company stocks. It's not evil or stuff, but it's just incentive, right? I would rather have this policy, right? I mean, if I have a choice, I would rather keep this going, because who doesn't like her stock to go up like 2,000% in the last 2 years or something, right? So,
but you have to be careful, because this is going to be uploaded on YouTube if I
yeah. But this guy, I'm just saying hypothetically.
Yes,
no names. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
We are pro-vaccine. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Right?
I think
Even YouTube,
Yeah.
right? We know all this censorship going on. It's all of the time is the system versus the goals, and the system, the incentive is such that it's better just if assume you are YouTube, right? You better like to be play on the safe side. You don't want to go against what the government narrative, right? Because that may get you trouble. But if you just follow the CDC, whatever, even it's wrong, turns out to be wrong, but you are good, right? Because you can always say, oh, I just follow the official, instructions. It's not my fault. The same with the doctors, right? They would rather prescribe everything what the CDC or NIH the guideline says, then they don't have liability, right? But if you prescribe something which probably do have a great chance to save the patient or anything, but what if he dies, right? Then you are fully responsible. So it's all incentives. That's how the filter I look at all these issues.
It is amazing how much people are driven by incentives. But like what you said with you'd rather trust, and I agree with you on this, that you'd rather trust a billionaire that went into politics than somebody who became a billionaire from politics. I agree with that because if you're taking a job where you're going to be, making substantially less than what you were making, then you're taking that political job because you're not worried about money anymore. It's more about what can you contribute. Now, of course, maybe somebody is there to do shady deals and crony capitalism, whatever, but I would trust it more. Like, I think people that have billions and billions of dollars, they've reached a place where money can't buy them things that are important anymore. And so ironically, money becomes less of a factor in their lives than somebody that's really dependent upon it because they're just holding their head above the water, having to pay their mortgage and stuff like that. Then money is really important to them. But for somebody who has excess, or I don't like that word excess, but somebody who has a lot of way beyond what they need for day-to-day stuff, then it's not important to them at all. And what does become important is certain types of values and having a society that functions in a certain way. And so. All
okay,
right,
cool.
well,
I think we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark again, and always goes somehow longer than the original 1-hour plan. But anyway, it's very. Any closing thoughts, guys?
I have a closing thought. I'm like I said, I'm a very philosophical guy, but then I really value things like you guys have doing like Thai and Xiaohui. Like, because I think like in BSV community, I find a lot of people who have ideas and we have a lot of futuristic visionary people, but at the same time, for us to build things, like I used to be a coder and so forth, and I've done your sCrypt, the coding and so forth, but I'm not meant for that, and for you to build those infrastructure and SDKs and all these things, for people to like developers to join in and start building things, I think we can finally put ideas into product, and I just want to thank you for you guys doing that, and that's why I wanted to join here as well, because I'm an idea guy as well, but I really value people like developing and building things, because I really can't do it myself. So thank you guys. I just want to say that, and I'm happy to join here and keep joining.
Okay.
And then one thing I also want to say we could do next time, because we might not have a time, but I was really kind of digging through what the sig hash flags mean on a transaction. And I still don't understand it. I watched your YouTube video. I read all the things on the Bitcoin SV wiki, and I'm like, what the heck?
We can talk about.
So
that'll be an interesting
so maybe next time.
Okay, that's a good topic next time. Okay, guys.
I was gonna bring it up this time, but it's too late. So
okay. Yeah, that will take quite some time. Yeah. But
okay.
But
well, good. That'll
Friday.
be a good subject for next time.
Next Friday. Okay.
All right.
All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day, and hopefully see you next Friday. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Kevin.
All right,
All right, see you. Nice to
Samir,
meet you,
Peter.
Jeff.
Bye.
All right, see you.
Bye.
All right. See you. Bye.